squadrons of the USA are placed under the unified command of Brigadier General Andrews, and he's directing new plans for sky power.
This Air Force will eventually consist of 1,000 planes, organized, trained, and ready for immediate service, and capable of concentration in any threatened area for the defense of the United States and its possessions.
Before their new commander, the battalions of the Clouds wing in overhead parade. This is Langley Field, Virginia, stationed for the Eastern Wing and commanding headquarters for all three wings of the reorganized Air Force. In these strategic Virginian skies midway along our eastern coast, the myriads of the blue are watched by General Andrews and his staff. And as they wheel in battle formation here at Langley, they are in easy striking distance of New England, Florida, and the Gulf Coast. And on they sweep to the imaginary defense of Uncle Sam's eastern shoreline.
On May 19, 1943, the crew of the B-17 Flying Fortress Memphis Belle was greeted upon returning to England after successfully completing 25 missions over Europe during World War II. They were ordered back to the United States, where they were welcomed as heroes and did an exemplary job of helping sell war bonds and raise morale on the home front. However, there's more to the story. It involves another bomber and a great military leader. It's a story of triumph and tragedy. General Charles P. Cabell of the United States Air Force was the head of General Hap Arnold's Advisory Council at the Pentagon from February 1942 to October 1943. The following is from General Cabell's memoirs, A Man of Intelligence, published in 1997. On 3 May, the day following the Combined Chiefs of Staff meeting, General Marshall called in General Acre just before his departure for the United Kingdom. Marshall requested Acre to carry a message to General Andrews. The message was that Andrews had been selected to command the entire Allied forces that would make the eventual invasion of Europe across the English Channel. General Andrews never received the message. It wasn't until February 1944 the job, given the name Supreme Allied Commander, was assigned to General Dwight David Eisenhower. The story of the B-24 Liberator Hot Stuff and her crew is one of historic triumph and tragedy. During an interview in 2005, General Jacob E. Smart, an aide to General Hap Arnold during World War II, agreed that Hot Stuff and her crew were the first in the 8th Air Force to complete 25 missions, even though the heralded Memphis Belle B-17 Flying Fortress wears the label. Hot Stuff completed 25 missions 3.5 months before the Memphis Belle, but tragedy struck, and she and her crew lost their rightful place in American history. Hot Stuff and her crew were ordered back to the United States to go on tour to help sell war bonds. Lieutenant General Frank M. Andrews, commander of the European Theater of Operations, was ordered to return to Washington, D.C. He contacted his friend Colonel Ted Timberlake, commander of the 93rd Bombardment Group, and requested to fly back to the States with Captain Robert Shine Shannon in Hot Stuff. Captain Shannon was unaware that General Andrews was bringing members of his staff and others along with him. Bombardier First Lieutenant Robert J. Jacobson, co-pilot First Lieutenant John Lentz, Sergeants George Farley, Leland Durham,
James Craighead and Grant Rondeau were bumped from the airplane to make room for General Andrews' entourage. General Andrews, an experienced pilot, replaced Lieutenant Lentz as co-pilot. Hot Stuff left Bovington Field in England for RAF Prestwick, Scotland, to get the latest weather conditions and refuel before continuing on to Reykjavik, Iceland. It was decided a stop at Prestwick was not necessary, and they continued on to Iceland. On approach to Iceland, Hot Stuff encountered unexpected poor visibility due to snow squalls, clouds, and rain. Captain Shannon made several low passes over Caldedarnes RAF airfield, but decided to continue on to land at Meeks Field near Keflavik. Zero visibility prevented him from landing, so he decided to return to Caldedarnes. But Hot Stuff crashed near the top of 1,100-foot Mount Fagradalsfjall. The tail gunner, Sergeant George Ezel, was the sole survivor of the crash. He received only minor injuries, but one of his legs was caught in the tail section and he couldn't get out. The aircraft caught fire, and George thought he was going to burn to death or be killed by exploding ammunition. Heavy rain eventually put the fire out, and he was rescued approximately 24 hours after the crash.
CBS World News brings you The World Today, presented Monday through Saturday at this same time. American General Andrews has been killed. The text of a communique announcing the accident said, Lieutenant General Frank Maxwell Andrews, Commanding General of the European Theater of the United States Forces, was killed late today in an airplane accident in an isolated locality of Iceland. Full information confirming the accident is not yet available.
Those killed on board Hot Stuff included the pilot, Captain Robert Shine Shannon, co-pilot, Lieutenant General Frank M. Andrews, who was also the commander of the European Theater of Operations, navigator, Captain James E. Gott, radio operator, Tech Sergeant Kenneth A. Jeffers, crew chief, Master Sergeant Lloyd C. Weir, gunner, Staff Sergeant Paul H. McQueen, civilian, Adna W. Leonard, Methodist bishop and chairman of the Corps of Chaplains, Brigadier General Charles H. Barth, General Andrews' Chief of Staff, Colonel Morrow Crum, he was a member of General Andrews' staff, Colonel Frank L. Miller, U.S. Army Chaplain, Chief of Chaplains, Major Robert H. Humphrey, U.S. Army Chaplain, Lieutenant Colonel Fred A. Chapman, U.S. Army, Major Theodore C. Totten, General Andrews' Secretary, Captain Joseph T. Johnson, General Andrews' aide. 2 memorial services were held in Reykjavik. The first one was held for Tech Sergeant Kenneth Jeffers at the Catholic Church of Christ, Landicott. The second memorial service for the other 13 who were killed in the crash was held at the Domi Kirche Lutheran Church next to the Parliament building in downtown Reykjavik. They were buried in the U.S. military plot in Foskover Cemetery in Reykjavik on May 8, 1943. In 1947, they were exhumed and returned to the United States. General Andrews is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia.
In June of 2012, I visited Iceland with the goal of visiting the crash site and recovering pieces of hot stuff wreckage. I was fortunate to find two Icelanders who were familiar with the crash site, Dodi and Ole Martinsson. They spend much of their time searching and documenting World War II crash sites in Iceland. The day after I arrived, we were on our way to the crash site near the top of Mount Fagradalsfjall.
Straight ahead, if you look at the sign with the information, the eye,
Right.
And the mountain,
Right behind
that's
it.
the crash site.
How about that? It's that close.
Oh.
We're starting up the mountain to the crash site. It's very difficult climbing. We are here. We're at the crash site. He has a piece of metal right there.
All over the place.
Pieces of the airplane.
First you found on your visit to the crash site.
Wow.
This is just the beginning.
Amazing, huh? This is looking toward Keflavik International Airport. It was Meeks Field during the war. This is where they tried to land at Meeks Field, but couldn't. And we're heading back to Kaldadon when they crashed into this mountain. This is part of the main landing gear. The dried up wreath was placed on the landing gear by the United States Ambassador to Iceland, Louis Arriaga, in 2011.
Part of the landing gear that's within the wing structure. You see, this is part of the webs from the. That riveting was probably done by women in the United States, and it's a very good job, professional job.
Form a search party and search the rough ground over here. We know of one piece out there which is fairly big, which has some letters, some writing on it that might be interesting.
We're walking in the lava fields, looking for pieces of the airplane that might have blown down the mountain, and there's an engine cowling out here somewhere. Dodi located a big piece of wreckage. So did Ole. Holy mackerel. Look at this.
B-24 D, aircraft number 51G, engine number 4, top.
How about that, huh? Would you turn that around? There we go. On May 3, 2013, the 70th anniversary of the crash of Hot Stuff that took the lives of 14 heroic Americans, a memorial service was held in the Andrews Theater in Keflavik, Iceland. The service included speeches by the President of Iceland, Ólafur Grímsson, and United States Ambassador to Iceland, Louis Arriaga. Ambassador Arriaga read a message of remembrance from United States Air Force Chief of Staff General Mark Welch, and letters were read from members of General Andrews' family. A memorial plaque was unveiled beside a highway near Mount Fagradalsfjall, the site of the tragedy. A fundraiser has been set up for a memorial monument that will be placed alongside the plaque on the 75th anniversary of the accident in 2018. Iceland's President Grímsson stated after seeing this video that every Icelander should see it. After the war, General Andrews was honored when Camp Springs Army Airfield in Maryland was renamed Andrews Field.
now Joint Base Andrews, the home of Air Force One. Since then, the accomplishments of this great leader have been nearly forgotten, and the first heavy bomber in the 8th Air Force to complete 25 missions, and her crew and those on board who were killed, were soon forgotten until now. The purpose of this video is to shed light on the gallant crew of the B-24 Liberator Hot Stuff and their heroic accomplishment, and to revive the legacy of a great American leader, Lieutenant General Frank M. Andrews.
My name is Bil Gros. I grew up in central New York State, where I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. And the day after I graduated, I went down and took exams to enter the cadet program, Air Force Cadet, because since I'd been knee-high, I wanted to fly. I didn't get called up, so I went to Albany, where I had signed up originally, and they told me that I might take use of that time by enlisting in the Air Force and going to technical school, which I would attend if I was a cadet. So I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in the early fall of 1941. In September, I went through radio school, which I preferred above mechanic, and graduated and was assigned to the 93rd Bomb Group at Barksdale Field. I had a story about General Andrews at Barksdale Field. When he inspected us prior to our leaving, I was on the wrong end of the line among the radio operators, so he stopped by me, and just before we left, we had been issued leggings, which were part of the pre-war uniform, and we were told to bleach them white and keep them on a pack. But during the night when we were hanging them out to dry, somebody stole mine. So I'm standing in the line, and we're ordered to say nothing except yes sir, no excuse sir. And unfortunately, he asked me where my leggings were, and I said, some son of a bitch stole them, sir. And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, he was a son of a bitch, wasn't he? And the Colonel Timberlake, I thought he was going to choke. We were sent to Florida, Fort Myers, Florida, where we flew anti-submarine patrol. I had to forget my cadet thing for a while, and in August we were sent to Grenadier Field, New Hampshire, where we received new airplanes and went overseas. On October the 9th, we flew our first mission to Lille, France. And that's started from first to last to April 16th, 1943, when I was released from combat with 31 missions. Jeff and I finished up about the same time, I'm sure of that. And I can't remember whether it was still in April or the 1st of May that Jeff found out he was going home. They were going to fly General Andrews back, and they were going home and be feted as the first to finish 25 missions in the 8th Air Force. Well, I was sent to I guess R&R place that was British. It was the RAF place. We were in Southport, England, which is on the west coast. It was there that I heard about Jeff's crash. And Jeff had been taking all my photographs that I hadn't sent home with him, and he was going to see my mother. He had written her a letter to, I don't know whether he had written it by that time because he was dead, but saying that he would bring them to her. It was a very upsetting time. Not only had I lost Jeff, but when Sermons and I came back, which was around the middle of May, we came back to the base. The replacement crews had arrived for the group. And so we came back to the base in the evening. So we went to the combat mess. In our combat mess, you had to walk up 4 or 5 stairs to get to. And we walked up the stairs and opened the door, and we didn't know anybody. To this day, that gets me. And we sat out on the steps crying like babies for a while. But I couldn't tell you just when I knew. It was just part of the scenery over there then. I mean, you don't get used to it, but people disappear. I know that they completed their missions a long time before the Memphis Belle, which at that time I had never heard of. When I first heard about the Memphis Belle, we just typical To us, if you were a B-24 man, it was publicity. That I think Boeing had the best PR people in the world, who somehow would always manage to upstage the B-24 no matter what. When you see pictures of a 8th Air Force plane, it's usually a B-17. But we knew that almost everybody in our group that was still alive had done their missions long before that. I've never been around that many good officers, good people, in the rest of the time I was in the Air Force. Most of our officers were West Pointers. The only one that wasn't was Major Baker or Colonel Baker, who was been in the Air Force for a long time, and was a good pilot and a wonderful man, born leader. And so was Timberlake.
These are a few of the consolidated B-24 Liberator bombers in the 8th Air Force's 93rd Bombardment Group, known as Ted's Traveling Circus. Most of these bombers completed 25 missions long before the famed Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, Memphis Belle. 193rd Bomb Group B-24s and crews became missing in action during the course of 396 missions. Total sorties numbered 8,169, during which 19,004 tons of high explosives and incendiaries were delivered. The 93rd's attrition ratio was greater than 25% per mission. 40 other 93rd aircraft losses were attributed to accidents and other causes. The 93rd was credited with 93 Axis kills and 41 probables in aerial combat. The date is March 21st, 1943, and the bombers are being prepared for a mission the next day to Wilhelmshaven, Germany. This will be a joint mission with B-17 and B-24 bombers. The B-24 Hot Stuff will be on its 30th mission, while the famed B-17 Memphis Belle will be on its 16th. Hot Stuff Bombardier Jake Jacobson is checking the assembly of the bombs. The 93rd Bombardment Group's home base is at Hardwicke Airfield in Hardwicke, England.